Again, I'm Steve Pucelik, Senior Product Manager here at Microsoft, and we're going to focus today on SharePoint Embedded as it is integrated with the Power Platform connectors. If you're not familiar with the Power Platform connectors, don't worry, we're just releasing those now, so we'll walk through exactly what they look like, exactly what they do, how easy they are, and how to configure them, not only within agents, but also within Power Automate themselves. So to ground us a little bit, I wanted to first get us back into, if you're new to SharePoint Embedded, what exactly is it? How do we use that within custom solutions? But initially, I talk with customers every day, and I talk with C-level customers every day. And some of the top concerns that they always tell me about are risk management and cybersecurity. How are they going to protect the data that they have already in their environment? AI is naturally a hot topic. How do we trust the data that we're going to put that on top of with the AI capabilities that we have? And I've got data everywhere. How am I going to modernize that data estate to reduce the technical debt that I have, bring that into a platform that I'm already paying for and taking more advantage of it, things like that. So that's where SharePoint Embedded starts to provide a lot of value. And we start to address a lot of those concerns. From the cyber and the risk management perspective, we integrate tightly with the M365 Purview. We integrate nicely with Entra, so all of the conditional access, MFA, all of the user restrictions that you have, totally honored there. From an AI perspective, you put that document into a SharePoint embedded container, it's AI ready. So we will index that. We will put that into the semantic index. We have some retrieval APIs. We have an integrated chat experience within the applications you can create. All of that is at your disposal there. And then from a data modernization perspective, get that into your one data estate. So now those custom applications that are using maybe some third-party legacy platforms, you have the ability to modernize those, get them into a clean environment with the features that your users are expecting. Okay. So from a SharePoint Embedded perspective, again, SharePoint Embedded is in your tenant today. Right now, you have SharePoint, you have OneDrive, you have the capability of enabling SharePoint Embedded and creating that isolated storage in your tenant right now. There's some links that we'll put in the chat window on how to enable that, but you have all of those capabilities and the graph endpoints that you need to create those custom applications or use that within Power Platform, use that within the agents that we're going to show a little later today. The core features that we deliver with SharePoint Embedded, obviously we call these the 4Cs. Copilot, what would be a Microsoft demo without a Copilot experience, and an agent to bring that home. So again, semantic index, searching, drop the document into that container, and we will make that Copilot ready. Compliance, we talked a little bit about compliance already. If you've got the sensitivity labels, retention policies, conditional access, e-discovery that you're using on your current content, you're going to be able to use that on SharePoint Embedded, no problem. Collaboration is by far one of the most popular features that we have in SharePoint Embedded. Drop that document into a container. Now you have the ability to edit that, co-author on it, open that in the desktop experience, do everything that you would imagine you can do with the document in your custom application. That's the key part there, okay? And core storage. Core storage, store as many documents as you want. Not really, but millions and millions and millions of documents can go into SharePoint Embedded and scale fast with those documents, okay? From a container perspective, containers are the core of SharePoint Embedded. So this is where it is going to hold those documents. So think of you're adding a document to a library. Container is nothing more than one document library with a one-site collection with one document library. It scales to millions of documents. It can scale to millions of containers. So that's the core that we're going to be talking about on the container portion. From a build it and use it perspective, you can see on the right-hand side, we have all of the hard stuff already done for you. Entra integration, nobody wants to do that. Admin Center, document collaboration, those are really super hard things to do. You put the user experience that you want on top of that, and we provide the platform that can scale to your needs. Okay? Now, Power Platform using SharePoint Embedded. So in the past, If you wanted to use SharePoint Embedded because it is a graph endpoint that you're calling, you can use the HTTP connector all day long. Works great. We've got demos on that, but now we don't need to. Okay, so what we're introducing is native support for the Power Platform connectors on SharePoint Embedded. So we have 47 new activities, all designed to do those CRUD operations that you would normally do through the graph endpoint. So if you don't know graph, that's okay. If you want to create an application in Power Apps, great. If you want to automate something in Power Automate, perfect. If you want to build an agent that uses the tool functionality to add documents to a container and then use that within your application, perfect. Okay, so again, no more HTTP connectors. So these are standard connectors that do use that subscription that you have within your pay-as-you-go configuration in SharePoint Embedded. All of it is in the security context of the user, and you pay for what you use. Okay, so every time you make a call to get a container, see the files, check out a file, upload a file, each one of those is an API call. That's where the cost comes in. Okay, so you manage the cost based on the configuration that you have. Okay, so enough of that. Let's get into how this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up by having a project management application. So the scenario here is I've got a project management oh boy, there we go, Teams. So I've got a project management application that I've developed, and I'm collaborating with people internally. I'm collaborating with people externally. I've got vendors that are sending me invoices and things like that, but I want to make this super simple. So I've created an agent that will allow users to simply upload the invoice. That invoice is going to go into a container within SharePoint Embedded, and we're going to pull off the metadata so that now further down the line, the user in accounting can see the invoice, know what kind of information is there, pay it, approve it, and things like that. Okay, so we're going to walk through a simple demo of what that user experience is going to look like. We're going to dive into exactly how we built it here in just a second. So I'm in Teams. I've got my agent deployed. I'm going to click on that prompt to upload my invoice into SharePoint Embedded, and it's going to prompt me to say, hey, and do it. So it's going to prompt me to add that into the chat experience. And we're going to get there in just a second. There we go. Okay, so do I want to attach an invoice? I sure do. So I'm going to go and it's going to prompt me to add that invoice into the chat message. So I'm going to go and I'm going to grab an invoice that I have that I want to process, drop that into the chat experience. It's going to upload it into the window as we normally would. I'm simply adding that to my prompt. So in this case, I'm taking the invoice. I'm getting a confirmation that, yep, this is the invoice. And we're on it. Okay, so accounting now has that. We're going to go through a little bit more of analysis here to say, okay, is everything complete on that invoice? So now I've got Azure AI Foundry looking at this saying, well, wait a second, there's some billing information that may not be there and so forth. So this is just a little bit of feedback to the user to say, hey, in the future or before we process this, you may need to correct that. Okay, but in this case, the agent has now consumed the invoice. We've got a workflow in the background that is processing that. I'm going to my custom application. So this is the application that the internal project people are using, external vendors are using. But if I go into my invoices folder, we're going to see that invoice. Okay, so here's my Johnson & Associates invoice. If I click on the properties of that invoice, now you can see that not only has it added that to my container, but it's also extracted the metadata out of that invoice so that I can see exactly what needs to be paid and so forth down the line. Okay, so it doesn't stop here because obviously accounting has to pay for that. I'm going to switch over to a Power App that I created that has Johnson Associates. Okay, so now I'm able to see this. Oh boy. resume this session. Yep. So I'm able to see the invoice. I'm able to see a thumbnail of that invoice and all of the metadata that was extracted so that I can pay that invoice. Additionally, I can see who it's going to be routed to for approvals. I can see where it is in the approval stack. If I wanted to extract metadata from the line items, I could do that as well. Okay, so here we go. So I've got my Johnson and Associates, my thumbnail there, so I know what I'm approving. The invoice metadata that I've automatically extracted through my agent. If I wanted to see line items, great, because I need to add these to the GL account and the accounting software, and also where in the approval history is it. Okay, so complete front to back. We've consumed the invoice. We've added it to a SharePoint embedded container. We have a Power App on top of this so that the accounting folks can see that. We have an application in front that the vendor can now see that invoice if they want to. All right, so let's back into this and exactly where the moving parts are. So I'm going to first start with the topic. So this is my agent that I have created. I've deployed this out to teams, and I'm simply asking a question here. This is, hey, do I want to attach the invoice? Obviously, I do. But a critical piece that we want to focus on is in this question where they're getting the file bytes. If we go to the properties of this, you're going to want to make sure that you have this entity recognition to include the file metadata. Okay, so that's going to be a critical one because as we get a little further down to the action that I'm taking, I'm going to pass the bytes of that file and the name of the file over to SharePoint Embedded. That's what my connector is going to require to add that to the container. Okay, so as I'm getting down to my action, now I'm going to go into my tool designer, and you'll see that, yep, when the agent calls the flow, I'm initializing a few variables here. I need to set the container ID. So remember that container ID is, in my case, the project that I'm working on. I want to make sure that I'm adding it to the right container, meaning the right project. So I have some context there that I need to impose. But you'll notice down here, this create file, this is a SharePoint embedded activity, okay, an action. And what it's going to require is the parent ID, which is, hey, what folder am I putting this in? And what container am I putting it in? So that's where we need to organize that accordingly. And I'm simply adding the file name and the name of the file from the file that vendor put in to my chat experience. Okay, so now we're consuming that, we're adding it into the container. We're going to get back that file ID, as you would imagine, and we're going to take that, we're going to process that invoice. So this is a simple invoice processing AI model in Power Automate. So we're taking that, we're passing the file over, and we're going to get the results of that extracted information. And I have metadata that is associated to that file in the container. Whatever invoice information I'm pulling out, I'm adding that as metadata to the file. So now if I'm searching for that in SharePoint Embedded, I can search by using a KQL query or whatever we want, right? So normal searching and indexing applies there, okay? So that is a lot of the new SharePoint Embedded connectors that we have. But let's take a look a little further on what some of the other ones that are available, okay? So right now, we are literally in the process of deploying these worldwide. So you'll notice that on my URL, I have that end add file, add connector, hide key equals SharePoint Embedded. Right now, if you put that on your environment, you're going to be able to expose the SharePoint Embedded activities, and you'll see all of them listed here, okay? So give us about a week or so, and that won't be necessary. Everything will be live in your environment. But as you can imagine, all of the CRUD operations that you're using within activities very similar to a SharePoint environment, you now have all of those available in SharePoint Embedded as well. So if I wanted to delete a file, create a folder, see the versions, whatever, all of those are now available, not only within the agents that we're creating here, but if I go back to a Power App that I've created, okay? So my Power App that I've created is, hey, show me all of the containers that I have in my environment, and then show me the files for that container that I've selected. Simple enough is if I go back to Power Automate, you'll notice that I'm getting that input, or I'm getting the container information from my Power App, and I'm simply calling this list of storage containers activity. It's going to take one parameter. It's going to say, what is the container type? So now I want to get all the containers that I have access to so that I can list it on my Power App. When I click on that container, now I want to see all the files that are in my container. So that's where we can dig a little deeper to say, okay, when I select that container, it's going to have a container ID, and I need to go filter that container to say, list all of the files in the root of the container. So as you can imagine, a container containing thousands or millions of documents. You may have folders that are going to separate those and organize them accordingly. We need to know where we're at in the tree. So I call it walk in the tree. We're in the root, or are we in the invoices folder, or are we in the correspondence folder, wherever we're at. So that's where we tell the activity in Power Automate, where are you? Now that we know that we're in the root, return back that information. So that JSON response that you're getting back, parse that within your application, list the files that you need to, and display that on your interface however you want to. Okay, so that's the beauty of it, is that JSON response, parse it just like any other JSON response, and you can use that to decorate that interface accordingly. But you'll notice that now it's one activity. Okay, so the only activity that I need is list the files in the container. If I wanted to add more, I can simply go and search for those activities for SharePoint Embedded, add those into my Power Automate flow just as you normally would. So no difference there. So if I go back to my Power App that I've got created, and of course it's been sitting there a while, so that's going to refresh. But you'll notice that, again, as I'm creating my Power Automate activities or Power Apps that are supporting that, we have all the connector framework that we need there to support that. So additionally, we also have a trigger. So if I'm going to grab this URL parameter here really quick. Okay, so we're going to do copy that. I'm going to put that in here, and we're going to change that really quick. So now I'm going to expose those connectors, but you'll notice too that we also have a trigger that you can fire if something is added to a container, if something changes in a container. Now you can go and react to that event and do further activity from there. Okay, so in addition to that, again, if I have that query string parameter only until next week, now I've got the ability to, again, see those 47 different connectors that we have and use those as you would need to. Okay. All right, so with that, hopefully this has been helpful. Look at the possibilities that you have with the tools and agents. Look at the possibilities that you have with your Power Automate, your Power Apps, using SharePoint Embedded to contain that isolated storage and provide all the functionality that you need there.